I trusted him completely until that winter night when I found a perfumed love letter in his coat pocket. When I confronted him, his eyes darted away as he claimed it was just an old letter. But the date at the top was from last week. My hands trembling, I slowly twisted off my engagement ring, placed it on the table between us, and walked toward the door. What I didn't know then was that his betrayal would lead me to discover a shocking family secret that would change everything. The scent hit me first, a delicate perfume that wasn't mine, clinging to the fabric of James's wool coat. I had been organizing our closet for winter, separating summer clothes to store away, when I slipped my hand into his pocket and felt the crisp edge of paper. Not just any paper, expensive stationery with a faint lavender scent that made my stomach twist instantly. It's probably just a receipt, I whispered to myself, even as my fingers closed around it. But deep down, I already knew. The elegant cursive handwriting that greeted me when I unfolded it belonged to a woman who dotted her eyes with tiny hearts and signed off with a lipstick kiss mark at the bottom. My dearest James, last night was magical. I can't stop thinking about how you held me. My vision blurred. The date at the top of the letter, just 7 days ago, seemed to pulse on the page. We had been together for 3 years. Engaged for 8 months. Our wedding venue was booked for spring. I don't know how long I stood there, reading and rereading those words, each one stabbing deeper than the last. The sound of keys in the door jolted me back to reality. James was home early. Anna? Where are you? His voice carried that familiar warmth that usually made me feel safe. Now it just made me nauseous. In the bedroom, I called back, my voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. I didn't hide the letter. I wanted him to see me holding it. When James appeared in the doorway, his smile faltered the instant he saw what was in my hands. It was the smallest reaction, just a flicker of recognition before he composed himself, but it told me everything. "What's that?" he asked, his tone deliberately casual as he set down his laptop bag. I held the letter up. "You tell me." He crossed the room too quickly, reaching for it. "Let me see." I stepped back, clutching the paper to my chest. "No. I want you to tell me who she is first." "Anna, come on." He laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Give me the letter." "It's from someone named Sophia," I said, my voice rising. "She seems to really enjoy your magical nights together." James ran a hand through his dark hair, the nervous gesture I once found endearing. It's not what you think." "Really? Because I think my fiancé is cheating on me." "It's an old letter," he said quickly. "From before we were together. I didn't even know it was in that coat." I flipped the paper around, pointing to the date. "Last Tuesday. Unless you've invented time travel, that's not old." The color drained from his face. "I can explain." "I'm sure you can," I interrupted. "You're good with words, James. Always have been. That's why I believed you every time you came home late from work events. Why I never questioned those weekends away with college friends." Each excuse now played back in my mind like warning signs I'd willfully ignored. "This isn't what it looks like," he insisted, reaching for me. "Please, just listen." I stepped away from his touch. "Did you even plan to end it with her before the wedding? Or were you going to make vows to me while keeping her on the side?" "Anna, stop. You're jumping to conclusions." His voice hardened. "This situation is complicated." "Complicated?" I laughed, a bitter sound I barely recognized. "Actually, it seems pretty simple to me." The diamond on my finger caught the fading afternoon light, throwing tiny rainbows across the wall we had painted together last spring. I twisted it off slowly, the platinum band sliding past my knuckle with surprising ease, as if it had been waiting for this moment. "Anna, don't," James began, real panic in his voice now. I placed the ring on the dresser between us with a soft clink. "I'm going to pack some things and leave. I think we both need space while I figure out if there's anything left to salvage here." "You're overreacting," he said, his tone shifting to frustration. "If you'd just let me explain." "Then explain." I shouted, the calm I'd been maintaining finally shattering. Tell me why another woman is writing about magical nights with my fiancé. James opened his mouth, then closed it again. His hesitation told me everything I needed to know. That's what I thought, I whispered. I grabbed my overnight bag from the closet and began filling it mechanically. Underwear, jeans, the gray sweater I'd worn on our first date. Memories attached to each item made my hands shake. 3 years of trust, dismantled by a perfumed letter. Where are you going to go? James asked quietly. Maya's, I replied, not looking at him. Maya, my best friend since college, who had actually warned me about James last year after seeing him at a restaurant with a business colleague who seemed overly friendly. I had defended him fiercely then. As I zipped the bag, James moved to block the doorway. Please don't leave like this. At least hear me out. I stared at the man I thought I knew, his pleading brown eyes, the small scar above his eyebrow from a childhood accident, the lips that had whispered promises I now questioned. For a moment, my resolve wavered. Move, James. Anna, I love you. Only you. This isn't. If you love me, you'll respect me enough to give me space right now. Something in my tone must have reached him. He stepped aside, shoulders slumping in defeat. As I walked past him, he caught my wrist gently. Will you at least call me when you're ready to talk? His voice was barely audible. I pulled my arm free. I don't know. The winter air hit me like a physical blow as I stepped outside our apartment building. Snow had begun to fall, tiny crystalline flakes that melted on my cheeks, mixing with tears I hadn't realized I was shedding. I sat in my car for several minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, watching snowflakes accumulate on the windshield and wondering how everything I thought I knew could unravel so completely in a single afternoon. The drive to Maya's apartment passed in a blur. Snow continued to fall, transforming the city into something unfamiliar, much like my life had become in the space of an hour. I parked haphazardly, grabbed my overnight bag, and trudged up 3 flights to her door. When Maya opened it, one look at my face told her everything. Oh, honey, she whispered, pulling me into a fierce hug. Her apartment smelled like cinnamon and safety. She'd been baking again, her stress relief activity. His cheating, I managed to say into her shoulder, the words making it real in a way that twisted my insides. I found a letter. Maya guided me to her couch, wrapped me in the chunky knit blanket she'd made last winter, and pressed a mug of tea into my hands before I'd even finished explaining. Her expression darkened as I described the letter, James's reaction, the ring now sitting abandoned on our dresser. I wish I could say I'm surprised, she finally said when I finished. I looked up sharply. What does that mean? Maya sighed, tucking her legs beneath her. I didn't want to say anything without proof, but I saw him with a woman at Riverfront Park 2 weeks ago. They seemed intimate. And you didn't tell me. The betrayal stung, even though I recognized the impossible position she'd been in. I was going to, but then you called that night talking about how James had surprised you with those concert tickets you wanted. She rubbed her temples. You sounded so happy, Anna. I thought maybe I was misinterpreting what I saw. Was she beautiful? The question escaped before I could stop it. Anna. Please. I need to know. Maya hesitated. Yes. Dark hair, expensive clothes. They were sitting close on a bench, talking intensely. I tried to picture it, James leaning in toward this mysterious woman the way he used to lean toward me, hanging on her every word. The image made me physically ill. I should have seen this coming, I said, setting down my untouched tea. There were signs. Like what? The late nights. The weekends away. The way he'd get defensive if I asked too many questions about his day. Each remembered moment now glowed with new significance. Last month, he changed his phone password. Classic, Maya muttered. He said it was for work security, but... I trailed off, remembering the way he'd angle his screen away when texts came through. God, I've been so stupid. No, Maya said fiercely. Trust isn't stupid, Anna. James is the one who... A sharp knock interrupted her. We both looked toward the door, startled. Are you expecting someone? I whispered. Maya shook her head and approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole. Her shoulders relaxed. It's just Mr. Kaplan from next door. Probably complaining about my baking again. She opened the door to reveal her elderly neighbor, clutching a newspaper and looking agitated. Miss Chen, your hallway smells like a bakery explosion, and while I appreciate the aromatic upgrade from usual apartment building odors, my cat is going berserk trying to claw through our shared wall. His eyes shifted to me. Oh. Company. Well, this is awkward. Despite everything, I found myself smiling at his dramatic delivery. Sorry, Mr. Kaplan. I'm having a rough day and stress-baked, Maya explained. Want some pumpkin bread to compensate for the feline distress? I'm on a no-carb diet, he sniffed, before adding quickly, but I suppose I could take some for my poker group tomorrow. While Maya wrapped up bread for her eccentric neighbor, my phone buzzed. James, I assumed, heart lurching despite everything. But the screen showed an unknown number and a text that made my blood freeze. I know what really happened. Call me if you want the truth about James. I stared at it, pulse racing. A prank? A mistake? Or someone who actually knew something? What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost, Maya said, returning after dispatching Mr. Kaplan with enough baked goods to feed his entire poker group. I wordlessly showed her the text. That's creepy, she said, frowning. Probably just James using another phone. Maybe. But something about the wording nagged at me. The truth about James, as if there was something beyond the obvious infidelity, something I still didn't know. You're not actually considering calling, are you? Maya looked alarmed. I don't know. I bit my lip. What if it's her? Sophia. All the more reason to delete it. Maya reached for my phone, but I pulled it back. I need answers, Maya. James certainly isn't giving them to me. At least wait until tomorrow. You're emotional right now. We both know emotional decisions aren't always smart ones. She was right, of course. But as she set up the pull-out couch for me and we settled in to watch mindless reality TV, the mysterious text burned in my mind. By the time Maya had fallen asleep, snoring softly beside me, I'd made my decision. I slipped out to her small balcony, shivering in the cold night air, and dialed the number. It rang 3 times before a woman's voice answered. I was hoping you'd call. Who is this? I demanded, my voice barely above a whisper. My name is Claire. I work with James. The name was familiar. James had mentioned her occasionally, a colleague in the marketing department. We need to talk, but not over the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow? How do I know this isn't some kind of trick? Because I have nothing to gain by tricking you, she replied simply. But you have everything to gain by hearing what I know. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. Fine. Where? The Blackbird Cafe, noon. Come alone. She paused. And Anna? I'm sorry about all of this. Truly. The line went dead, leaving me with more questions than answers and the unsettling feeling that whatever I thought I knew about James's betrayal was only the tip of a much larger iceberg. The Blackbird Cafe sat nestled between a vintage bookstore and a florist, its windows fogged with steam from the espresso machine. I arrived 15 minutes early, selecting a corner table with a view of the door. Each time the bell chimed, my heart leaped, only to sink again when the newcomer wasn't Claire. At precisely noon, a slender woman with copper hair entered, scanning the room until her eyes locked with mine. I'd seen Claire twice before at company functions, always professional, somewhat reserved. Today, strain showed around her eyes. Anna, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Thank you for coming. You said you know the truth about James, I replied, skipping pleasantries. So tell me. Claire ordered a black coffee, then leaned forward. First, you should know I didn't send the letter you found. I never said anything about a letter. James called me last night, distraught. He explained what happened. A bitter taste filled my mouth. So he sent you to clean up his mess? Convince me it was all a misunderstanding. No, Claire said firmly. I'm here because I'm tired of being part of the lie, even by omission. She took a deep breath. The woman James has been seeing isn't his lover. The letter made it pretty clear. The letter was from Sophia Lambert. And yes, she's infatuated with James, but that's not why he's been meeting her. Claire hesitated. Her connection to James, and to you, is much more complicated. My coffee sat untouched, cooling between my hands. What are you talking about? Sophia is your mother's half-sister. The words hung in the air, incomprehensible. That's impossible. My mother doesn't have a sister. She does, Claire insisted. A sister she's never met. Born from an affair your grandfather had decades ago. My mind raced to process this absurdity. And you expect me to believe James just happened to discover this long-lost relative? No. Sophia found him. She recognized your name when James mentioned you during a business dinner where I was present. She approached him afterward, explained who she was, and asked for his help connecting with your family. Why wouldn't she just contact us directly? Claire's expression softened. She's dying, Anna. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She wanted to meet her biological family before. She trailed off. But she was afraid of rejection, of causing pain. James agreed to help ease the introduction. The cafe sounds faded to white noise as my reality tilted again. If Claire was telling the truth, James hadn't been unfaithful, he'd been keeping a devastating family secret. But why keep it from me? I don't believe you, I said, even as doubt crept in. Where's your proof? Claire reached into her bag, producing a folder. Sophia gave these to James. He left them at the office yesterday. Inside were photocopies of old letters, a birth certificate, and a faded photograph of a young woman standing beside a man who looked unmistakably like my grandfather. On the back, faded cursive, Thomas and Rachel, 1965. My grandmother's name was Eleanor, I said weakly. Yes. Rachel was the woman he had an affair with. My hands trembled as I examined a more recent photograph of Sophia, a woman in her 50s with eyes startlingly similar to my mother's. The resemblance was undeniable. Why wouldn't James tell me this himself? I demanded. Sophia asked him not to, at least initially. She wanted to meet your grandmother first, make peace there before widening the circle. Claire paused. And recently, when James wanted to tell you, Sophia's health took a turn. He was waiting for her condition to stabilize. My anger flared. He had no right to keep this from me. This is my family. I agree, Claire said simply. That's why I'm here. As I stared at the evidence before me, something else occurred to me. The perfumed letter, that wasn't about their meetings. Claire looked uncomfortable. Sophia developed feelings for James during their interactions. He rejected her advances and tried to distance himself while still helping her connect with your family. The letter was her last attempt to persuade him. And I'm supposed to just believe that. Check James's phone, Clay suggested. He saved the text where he told Sophia their relationship needed to remain strictly platonic. My head pounded. If true, I'd accused James of something he hadn't done. But he had still betrayed my trust by keeping this enormous secret. There's something else you should know, Claire added quietly. Your grandmother Eleanor is aware of Sophia's existence. James approached her first, 2 months ago. The betrayal deepened. My own grandmother knew and didn't tell me. She's been struggling with whether to reveal this to your mother. It's reopened old wounds for her. I gathered the documents with shaking hands. I need to speak with my grandmother. Of course, Clay said, relief evident in her voice. James wanted to tell you everything himself, but I thought you deserved to know immediately, before. Before what? Sophia was admitted to hospice care yesterday. She may only have weeks left. I stood abruptly, nearly knocking over my untouched coffee. Thank you for telling me, Claire. I need to go. Outside, snow fell in thick flakes, muffling the city sounds. I sat in my car, staring at the folder beside me, trying to reconcile this new reality. The family I thought I knew had secrets deeper than I could have imagined. And James, had he been protecting me or deceiving me? There was only one way to find out. I started the engine and headed toward my grandmother's house in the suburbs, questions burning in my mind and a strange mix of anger and anticipation churning in my stomach. My grandmother's house looked exactly as it always had, a modest two-story colonial with blue shutters and a wreath on the door. As a child, this place had represented stability, comfort, and unconditional love. Now I wondered what else those walls had concealed over the years. I knocked, clutching the folder from Claire like a shield. When the door opened, my grandmother's smile faltered at the sight of my expression. "Anna, sweetheart. This is a surprise." Her voice wavered slightly. "We need to talk, Grandma." I stepped past her into the familiar entryway, the scent of cinnamon and furniture polish wrapping around me. Eleanor Law had always seemed timeless to me, her silver hair and graceful movements belying her 80 years. Today, she suddenly looked her age, a vulnerability in her eyes I'd never noticed before. "You know why I'm here, don't you?" I asked, following her into the living room. She gestured for me to sit but remained standing herself, hands clasped tightly together. "James called. He said you found something and left." "Not just something. A letter from Sophia Lambert." I opened the folder, spreading the contents across her coffee table. "And then I received these from his co-worker." My grandmother's face drained of color as she stared at the photograph of my grandfather with Rachel. Slowly, she sank into her armchair. "So it's true?" I pressed. "Grandpa had an affair? Mom has a half-sister she doesn't know about." "Yes." The word came out barely above a whisper. "And you've known all this time?" "No," she said quickly. "Not all this time. I knew about Thomas's indiscretion. But I thought the child was a boy who died in infancy. That's what he told me." Her hands trembled. "It wasn't until James appeared on my doorstep 2 months ago that I learned the truth." I struggled to process this. But why would Grandpa lie about his own child? To protect me, I suppose. Or himself. Bitterness tinged her voice. "Thomas always thought he knew what was best for everyone. And you decided to do the same thing, keeping this from Mom, from me." I was trying to make sense of it myself. Her voice rose with raw emotion. "Imagine discovering after 40 years that your husband's betrayal was even deeper than you thought. That there's a woman out there who shares your daughter's blood but who was raised by another mother." The pain in her eyes was raw, genuine. For the first time, I saw my grandmother not as the family matriarch but as a woman who had been deeply wounded. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "But that doesn't excuse keeping me in the dark while my fiancé was secretly meeting with this woman. James wanted to tell you." She reached for a tissue. "He came to me first out of respect, and because Sophia specifically asked to meet me before anyone else. We agreed to wait until after your engagement party." She paused. Then Sophia's condition worsened, and everything accelerated. "The letter I found wasn't about family meetings," I pointed out. "It was romantic, intimate." My grandmother nodded. "James told me about that too. Apparently, Sophia developed feelings for him. He rejected her advances, but she persisted." She looked directly at me. "He showed me the text messages where he made it clear their relationship could only be about reconnecting her with our family." I wanted to believe this version of events, but doubt still gnawed at me. Why would she write such an explicit letter if he'd already rejected her? Desperation, perhaps. "She's dying, Anna. And James resembles Thomas when he was younger. I noticed it the first time you brought him home." She gestured to a photo on the mantle of my grandfather in his 30s. For a woman grappling with mortality and family rejection, that resemblance might have triggered complicated feelings. The implications made me uncomfortable, but I couldn't deny the logic. Still, one question remained. Why didn't James just tell me the truth when I confronted him with the letter? Before my grandmother could answer, the doorbell rang. She glanced toward the entryway, then back at me with a knowing look. "Perhaps you should ask him yourself." James stood on the porch, snow dusting his shoulders, exhaustion etched across his face. When he saw me, relief washed over his features. "Anna," he breathed, like a prayer. "Claire told me she spoke with you." "Come in, James," my grandmother called from behind me. "I think it's time we had complete honesty in this family." The three of us sat in the living room, an uncomfortable triangle of secrets and half-truths. James pulled out his phone, navigating to his messages. "I should have shown you these immediately," he said, handing me the device. "I was caught off guard when you found the letter. I knew how it looked, and I panicked." I scrolled through his exchanges with Sophia. Dozens of messages discussing her illness, her hopes to connect with the Law family, arrangements for meetings with my grandmother. And then, 3 weeks ago, a shift in tone from Sophia, followed by James's firm but kind rejection. "I value your friendship and respect your journey to connect with your family. But I'm committed to Anna, and any romantic involvement between us would be inappropriate." Sophia's reply: "I understand. But when I see you, I see Thomas, the man my mother loved until the day she died. It's hard to separate those feelings." "When you confronted me with the letter," James said quietly, "I was afraid if I told you the whole truth about Sophia's feelings for me, you'd think I'd encouraged her somehow. So instead you said nothing and let me believe you were cheating." Anger flared again. "How was that better?" "It wasn't," he admitted. "I made the wrong call. I thought I could explain everything properly if you'd just give me time." He ran a hand through his hair. "But you seemed so certain, and then you left so quickly." My grandmother reached over to touch my arm. "James made a mistake in how he handled this, Anna. But his intentions were to protect this family, and Sophia, during an incredibly delicate situation." I looked between them, these two people who had decided what truths I deserved to know and when I deserved to know them. "You both should have trusted me with the truth from the beginning." "You're right," James said simply. "I was wrong. And I've spent every minute since you walked out trying to figure out how to make this right." The sincerity in his voice made my chest ache. I wasn't ready to forgive him, not yet, but beneath my anger, a tiny seed of understanding had begun to take root. "I need to meet her," I said finally. "Sophia. I need to see for myself what this is all about." St. Agnes Hospice Center stood on a quiet street lined with bare winter trees. The modern building's glass facade reflected the gray afternoon sky, somehow both sterile and serene. I sat in my car, watching visitors come and go, each wrapped in their own grief or anxieties. "You don't have to do this today," James said from the passenger seat. "We'd driven separately to my grandmother's house but arrived here together after he convinced me Sophia's condition was deteriorating rapidly." "I do," I replied, gripping the steering wheel. "Because if I wait, I might never get the chance." The hospice lobby was decorated with muted colors and soft lighting, attempting warmth in a place defined by endings. At the reception desk, James gave Sophia's name, and a kind-faced nurse directed us to room 218. "She's having a good day," the nurse told us. "But please keep your visit brief. She tires easily." Outside Sophia's door, I hesitated. What do you say to a dying woman who shares your blood but is a complete stranger? A woman who may have developed feelings for your fiancé? James squeezed my hand reassuringly, and I was too nervous to pull away. I knocked softly, and a voice called, "Come in." Sophia Lambert reclined against white pillows, and four stand beside her bed. Her dark hair, streaked with silver, framed a face that made my breath catch. The resemblance to my mother was unmistakable in the curve of her cheek, the shape of her eyes. Those eyes widened when she saw me. "Anna," she said, voice surprisingly strong. "I never thought I'd get to meet you." James spoke first. "Sophia, this is Anna. She knows everything now." A complex emotion crossed her face, relief mixed with something like embarrassment. "I'm sorry it happened this way. The letter. I never meant for you to find it." I stepped closer to her bed, studying the woman who had unwittingly upended my life. She was thin from illness, but I could see she had once been beautiful. The monitor beside her bed beeped steadily, marking time we both knew was limited. "Why did you write it?" I asked directly. Sophia's gaze flickered to James, then back to me. Foolishness. Desperation. She twisted the edge of her blanket. When you're dying, normal boundaries sometimes blur. James was kind to me when I felt completely alone, and he reminded me of someone I've missed my whole life. My grandfather, I stated. She nodded, eyes glistening. Thomas was the love of my mother's life. They met when she was a secretary at his accounting firm. He promised to leave his family for her, but when she got pregnant, she trailed off. Well, you know how that story ends. Did you ever meet him? I asked, surprised by my own curiosity. Twice. Once when I was 17, I tracked him down, desperate to understand who I was. He gave me money to stay away. Her voice hardened. The second time was just before he died. I wanted him to acknowledge me, just once. He refused. The grandfather I remembered, who taught me chess and slipped me candy when my parents weren't looking, seemed irreconcilable with this callous figure from Sophia's story. Why reach out to our family now, after all these years? Cancer has a way of clarifying priorities, she replied simply. I don't have children. My mother is gone. When I received my diagnosis, I realized your family, your mother, is the only blood connection I have left in this world. She paused. I'm not asking for money or even forgiveness. I just wanted to know my sister before I die. My mother doesn't know about you yet, I said. I know. Your grandmother wanted to tell her in person. Sophia's eyes drifted to the window. I understand if that never happens now. An uncomfortable silence fell. James excused himself to get coffee, tactfully giving us privacy. When the door closed behind him, Sophia spoke again. He loves you very much, you know. He never gave me any encouragement, quite the opposite. Then why the letter? I couldn't help asking. She smiled sadly. Terminal illness doesn't make you a saint, Anna. It just makes you more intensely whatever you already are. I've always been somewhat impulsive, romantic to a fault. She coughed, wincing. The letter was a last, desperate attempt to feel something other than illness and regret before I die. It was wrong, and I'm truly sorry. Her candor disarmed me. I found myself pulling a chair closer to her bed. Tell me about your life. What do you do, or did you do, before? Before cancer became my full-time job. She laughed, a surprisingly musical sound. I was a literature professor. 19th century British novels, primarily. Jane Austen, the Brontes. My mother teaches literature too, I said, startled by the coincidence. American modernism. I know, Sophia smiled. I've read all her published articles. She's brilliant. For the next hour, I listened as Sophia shared pieces of her life, her travels through Europe, her beloved cats, the students who still wrote to her. She showed me photos on her phone, her childhood home, her mother, my grandfather's mistress, her college graduation. With each story, this other woman transformed from a threat into a person, complex, flawed, but undeniably connected to me. When James returned, he found us looking through a small album of photographs Sophia had compiled for my mother. I'd like her to have these, Sophia said, passing me the album. Whether she wants to meet me or not. As we prepared to leave, her energy visibly flagging, Sophia caught my hand. I never meant to cause pain for your family, Anna. Or for you and James. I nodded, uncertain what to say but feeling the weight of her sincerity. At the door, I turned back. I'll bring my mother to meet you. I can't promise when, but I'll try. The relief in her eyes told me this was all she had hoped for. 3 days later, I sat in my office at the design firm, staring blindly at fabric swatches for a client's living room renovation. My phone buzzed with a text from James, his 15th since our visit to Sophia. Just checking in. Hope your day is going well. No pressure to respond. Each message was like this, gentle, respectful of my space, but persistent. I hadn't returned to our apartment yet, still processing everything from the hospice visit. Maya had extended her couch offer indefinitely, though her concerned glances grew more pointed each day. Oath to Anna. My assistant Zoe waved a hand in front of my face. The Hendersons are here for their 2 o'clock. I nodded, gathering my portfolio. Thanks. And Zoe? Could you reschedule my afternoon appointments tomorrow? I need to take my mother somewhere. After considerable thought, I'd called my mother last night, asking her to clear her schedule. I hadn't told her why. That conversation needed to happen in person. The client meeting passed in a blur of neutral tones and lighting options. When I returned to my office, I found a delivery on my desk, a small plant in a ceramic pot shaped like a house, with a note, "Homes can be rebuilt. So can trust. When you're ready to talk, I'll be here. J." No grand gestures, no dramatic declarations, just a simple reminder of what we'd shared and what we could still have. Despite everything, I smiled. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Anna? It's Eleanor. My grandmother rarely called me directly. I'm at St. Agnes with Sophia. The doctors say her condition has stabilized somewhat. She might have more time than they initially thought. Relief washed over me. That's good news. Yes. She's asking about you and your mother. Have you decided when to tell Elizabeth? Tomorrow, I confirmed. I'm picking her up for lunch, then taking her to meet Sophia. She'll be angry with me, my grandmother said softly, for keeping this secret all these years. Probably, I agreed. But secrets have done enough damage to this family. It's time for truth. After hanging up, I stared at James's text again before finally replying, "Coffee tomorrow after work? We should talk." His response came immediately, "Name the place and time." "I'll be there." The next day, my mother's reaction to the news about Sophia mirrored my own initial disbelief, followed by anger, then a quiet, contemplative acceptance. "How could he do this to Mom?" she asked as we sat in my car outside the hospice. "And how could she keep it from me all these years?" "I think they both thought they were protecting you," I said, surprising myself by defending them. "But I also think you deserve to know your sister, especially now." Elizabeth Law had always been the more reserved parent, the analytical professor who expressed love through practical actions rather than effusive words. But when she entered Sophia's room and saw her half-sister's face, so similar to her own, something broke open. They embraced like long-lost friends, both crying, decades of separation dissolving in an instant. I slipped out, giving them privacy for their first real conversation, and found myself texting James, "Can we meet earlier? Say, for instead of 6? "I'll be there," came his immediate reply. The cafe we'd chosen was neutral territory, neither our regular date spot nor somewhere entirely new. James was already waiting when I arrived, 2 cups of coffee on the table. He stood when he saw me, uncertainty in his eyes. "You ordered for me?" I asked, noticing my usual latte. "I hoped you still took it the same way." He gestured for me to sit. "How did it go with your mother and Sophia?" "Better than I expected." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. They connected immediately. It was like they'd known each other forever. James nodded. "I'm glad. Sophia deserves that peace." A silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken thoughts. "I've been staying at Myers," I finally said. "I know. Is it helping? Having space to think?" "Yes. And no." I met his eyes. "I'm still angry that you kept Sophia a secret from me." "You have every right to be," he acknowledged. "But I also understand why you did it," I continued. "You were trying to respect Sophia's wishes while navigating an impossible situation." James leaned forward. "If I could do it over again, I would have told you everything from the beginning. I made the wrong choice, Anna. Not about helping Sophia, but about keeping you in the dark." "The letter," I said, the question still nagging at me. "Why did you keep it in your coat pocket?" He sighed. "Honestly, I planned to show it to your grandmother as evidence that Sophia's feelings had crossed a line. I was going to suggest we find another way to handle the family introduction." It made sense, the kind of practical solution James would devise. After 3 years together, I knew his problem-solving instincts. I believe you, I said finally. About the letter, about your intentions. Relief flashed across his face, but I held up a hand. But trust isn't like a light switch, James. I can't just flip it back on because the facts check out. I know, he said quietly. Trust is earned. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn yours back. Including giving me time. He nodded. As much as you need. And complete transparency going forward. About everything, he promised. No matter how difficult or uncomfortable. In that moment, I could see the path forward, not easy or straightforward, but possible. For the first time since finding the letter, I felt something like hope. I'm not ready to come home yet, I told him. But I am ready to start rebuilding. James reached across the table, palm up, an invitation, not a demand. After a moment's hesitation, I placed my hand in his. One day at a time, he said. As I nodded, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Sophia is asking for you. Can you come back? I need to return to the hospice, I told James, standing. Of course. Do you want me to come with you? The old James would have already been putting on his coat, assuming his presence was required. This new deference to my wishes felt unfamiliar but right. Not today, I said gently. But soon. As I left, he called after me, Anna? I turned. Thank you for giving us a chance. Over the next 2 weeks, Sophia's condition stabilized enough for her to receive regular visitors. My mother spent every afternoon at her bedside, making up for lost decades in hours of conversation. They discovered shared interests beyond literature, a love for French cinema, an aversion to cilantro, the same habit of solving crossword puzzles in ink. These commonalities became precious to my mother, little confirmations of their connection despite a lifetime apart. I joined them when I could, sometimes bringing my grandmother, who had finally faced the reckoning she dreaded. The first meeting between Eleanor and Sophia had been tense, both women carrying the weight of my grandfather's choices. But as Eleanor took Sophia's hand and simply said, "I'm sorry he denied you," something shifted. They would never be close, but they found a fragile peace in their shared history. James kept his distance from the hospice, respecting my request for space while rebuilding trust. Instead of grand gestures, he sent thoughtful texts, links to articles about topics we'd discussed, photos of places meaningful to our relationship, simple acknowledgments of significant moments. Each message ended the same way, no pressure to respond. I'm here when you're ready. Sometimes I replied immediately. Other times, I let days pass before answering. He never complained, never pushed, demonstrating a patience I hadn't seen in him before. He's really trying, Maya observed one evening as I responded to his latest text, a photo of the community garden where we'd had our second date. Yes, I agreed, setting down my phone. The question is whether trying is enough. What more do you want from him? She asked, genuinely curious. I considered this. I'm not sure. Maybe time to figure out if I can fully trust him again. Though I hadn't returned to our apartment, I had reclaimed my engagement ring from the dresser where I'd left it. I wore it on a chain around my neck, not ready to place it back on my finger but unwilling to abandon what it represented. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, as I sat with Sophia discussing a novel we both loved, she suddenly reached for my hand. Her fingers touched the ring hanging from my chain. He's a good man, Anna, she said softly. Flawed, as we all are, but good at his core. I know, I admitted. But trust, once broken, is hard to mend, she finished. But not impossible. She coughed, wincing with pain. When you have limited time left, you see things differently. The mistakes people make matter less than the love they offer. Are you saying I should forgive him because life is short? She smiled weakly. I'm saying make your choice based on the whole of who he is, not just his worst mistake. Her fingers tightened around mine. I wasted years being angry at Thomas for rejecting me, at your grandmother for having the family that should have included me. That anger gave me nothing but loneliness. The monitor beside her bed beeped, signaling it was time for her medication. A nurse entered, and I stood to leave. "Anna," Sophia called as I reached the door. "Whatever you decide about James, decide it for yourself. Not for me, not for your mother, not even for him. Your happiness matters most." That evening, I joined my mother and grandmother for dinner at Eleanor's house. We sat in the kitchen, the same table where I'd eaten countless meals as a child, now the setting for a conversation none of us had ever imagined having. "The doctors say she has maybe a month," my mother said, pushing food around her plate. "Maybe less." "At least you've had this time with her," I offered. She nodded, eyes distant. "It's strange. I spent 50 years as an only child, and now I'll spend however many years I have left as an only child again. But somehow, everything feels different." "Because now you know the truth," my grandmother said quietly. "I'm sorry I kept it from you, Elizabeth. I thought I was protecting you." My mother reached across the table, taking her hand. "I understand, Mom. I don't agree with your choice, but I understand it." She glanced at me. Parents make mistakes trying to shield their children. Sometimes the greatest act of love is allowing them to face difficult truths. The parallel to my situation with James wasn't lost on me. Later, as I prepared to leave, my grandmother handed me a small wooden box. "What's this?" I asked. "Letters," she replied. "Between your grandfather and me, during the rough years after I learned about Rachel. I thought they might help you understand how people find their way back to each other after betrayal." That night in Maya's guest room, I read through the letters by lamplight. They chronicled my grandparents' painful journey, my grandfather's remorse, my grandmother's anger and hurt, their halting steps toward reconciliation. In one particularly poignant letter, my grandfather had written, "I cannot undo what I've done, Eleanor. I can only promise to live each day forward with honesty and devotion. If you find you cannot forgive me, I will accept that consequence. But if you can, I swear I will spend every remaining day earning back your trust." They had found their way back to each other. The grandparents I knew had shared a deep, if sometimes complicated, love until my grandfather's death. Had my grandmother ever fully trusted him again? Had that even been the right choice for her? The next morning, I woke to a text from my mother. "Sophia took a turn overnight. The doctors say it's time. Can you come?" I dressed quickly, calling James on my way to the hospice. "Sophia's declining rapidly," I told him. "My mother asked if you could come too." "I'll be there in 20 minutes, he promised. When we arrived, Sophia was conscious but weak, her breathing labored. My mother sat beside her, holding her hand. My grandmother stood near the window, her expression a mixture of sorrow and resignation. James and I hung back, giving the sisters space for what we all knew were their final conversations. As the hours passed, Sophia drifted in and out of consciousness. During one lucid moment, she beckoned James closer. "Take care of her," she whispered, glancing toward me. "And take care of yourself." He nodded, blinking back tears. "I will." Later, as evening shadows lengthened across the room, Sophia's breathing grew more irregular. The 5 of us maintained our vigil, a strange family united by secrets, loss, and newfound connections. "It won't be long now," the night nurse told us gently. My mother climbed onto the bed, cradling Sophia in her arms like they were children who had never been separated. "I've got you, little sister," she murmured. "You're not alone." James stood behind me, his presence steady but undemanding. Without thinking, I reached back for his hand. He took it, squeezing gently, and we watched together as Sophia took her last breath surrounded by the family she had waited a lifetime to know. Retrium. The day of Sophia's funeral dawned clear and cold, sunlight glinting off fresh snow. The small chapel filled with her colleagues and students, alongside our newly expanded family. My mother delivered a eulogy that moved even strangers to tears, a tribute to the sister she had only just found and already lost. "Sophia taught me that family isn't just who raised you or who shares your name," she said, her voice steady despite her grief. "It's also who finds you, who chooses you, even when the timing isn't perfect. Sometimes especially then." I sat between James and my grandmother in the front pew, conscious of the engagement ring still hanging from the chain around my neck. In the 3 weeks since Sophia's passing, James and I had been carefully rebuilding our relationship, meeting for coffee, taking long walks, having the difficult conversations we'd previously avoided. After the service, we gathered at my grandmother's house. As guests mingled in the living room, I found myself drawn to the study, my grandfather's former sanctuary. The room remained largely unchanged since his death, his leather chair still positioned by the window, bookshelves still lined with his favorite volumes. "I thought I might find you here," James said softly from the doorway. I turned, offering a small smile. "Just needed a moment of quiet." He nodded, remaining at the threshold. "Take all the time you need. I'll be outside when you're ready." As he turned to leave, I called after him. "James? You can stay. If you want." He crossed the room, keeping a respectful distance as he settled into the chair opposite mine. "How are you holding up?" "I'm okay," I said, surprised to find it mostly true. Sad for my mother, for the time she and Sophia lost. But grateful they found each other, even briefly. "Your mother is remarkable," he observed. "Like you." I studied him in the afternoon light, the man I had loved, lost trust in, and was now seeing anew. These past weeks had revealed a James the first hadn't fully appreciated before, more patient, more willing to sit with uncomfortable truths, more attentive to my needs without trying to manage my feelings. "I've been thinking about what happens next," I said carefully. "For us." And I reached for the chain around my neck, unclasping it. The ring slid into my palm, catching the light. "I'm not ready to wear this again." "Not yet." Disappointment flickered across his face, but he nodded. "I understand. But," I continued, "I am ready to come home. To our apartment. To see if we can build something new together." Hope replaced disappointment in his eyes. "Truly?" "Yes. With conditions." I leaned forward. "Complete honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. Equal partnership in decisions that affect us both. And couples therapy to help us navigate the rebuilding process." "Yes to all of it," he said without hesitation. "I've already researched therapists, actually. Just in case you were willing to try." I smiled at his characteristic preparedness. "Of course you have." Later that evening, after the last guests had departed, I helped my mother and grandmother clean up. As we worked side by side in the kitchen, my mother paused, dishcloth in hand. "Sophia left you something," she said. "In her will." "Me? Why would she leave me anything?" My mother retrieved an envelope from her purse. "She wanted you to have this. Said it might help with next steps." Inside was a check for a substantial amount and a handwritten note. "Anna. For your new beginning, whatever shape it takes. Life is too short for anything less than authentic love. Trust your instincts. They led you to the truth when others would have hidden it. If those same instincts tell you James is worthy of a second chance, listen to them. With gratitude for the family I found at the end. Sophia." The following weekend, James and I moved my things back into our apartment. The space felt both familiar and strange, like returning to a childhood home after years away. We navigated around each other cautiously at first, relearning shared territory. "I was thinking," James said as we unpacked my clothes, "maybe we should redecorate. Start fresh." I considered this. "I'd like that. Actually, I've been sketching some ideas." Interior design had always been my passion, but I realized I'd never fully applied those skills to our own space. "What if we turned the guest room into a proper office for you? And repaint the living room that sage green you've always wanted," he suggested. "You hated that color," I reminded him. He shrugged. "I've gained perspective on what matters. Paint color doesn't." That night, lying beside him in our bed for the first time in nearly 2 months, I felt the weight of the ring in my palm. I hadn't put it back on my finger yet, but I'd moved it from the chain to my nightstand, progress of a sort. "What are you thinking about?" James asked, his voice low in the darkness. "Sophia," I admitted. "And my grandfather. About choices and consequences, and how secrets can ripple through generations. He was quiet for a moment. Do you think your grandparents made the right choice? Staying together after his affair? I don't know, I said honestly. It was right for them, I suppose. They found happiness together again, however imperfect. And us? He asked, the question hanging between us. I turned to face him, finding his outline in the dim light. I think we're writing our own story now. Not my grandparents', not Sophia's. Ours. The next morning, I woke before James and slipped quietly from bed. In the soft dawn light, I stood at our bedroom window, watching the city wake. On the dresser lay the engagement ring, a symbol of promises broken and, perhaps, of promises that could be renewed on stronger foundations. I picked it up, turning it in my fingers, remembering the night I had removed it in anger and hurt. So much had changed since then. I had changed. We had changed. Without overthinking, I slipped the ring onto my finger, not in response to any grand gesture or request from James, but as my own quiet choice. When he woke later to find me sketching designs for our renovated living room, his eyes fell to my hand. He noticed immediately but said nothing, just smiled with a warmth that reached his eyes. Coffee, he offered. Please, I replied. As he moved to the kitchen, I returned to my sketches, adding details to the home we would rebuild together. Some relationships shatter beyond repair when trust is broken. Others, like fine pottery mended with gold, can emerge stronger at the broken places, more beautiful for having been damaged and carefully restored. Our story wouldn't be perfect, but it would be authentic, built on truth rather than comfortable illusions. And that, I was beginning to believe, was a foundation that might last. Sometimes, I whispered to myself, recalling the final line I would add to our wedding vows when the time came, the strongest love stories don't begin with once upon a time, but with once again, with eyes wide open.